It's a battle of big ideas in the fight for 2020. President Trump ramping up the rhetoric and going after his Democratic rivals, including Joe Biden, after a report saying allies want the former VP to scale back his schedule because of his gaffes.
You got Pocahontas is rising. You got Kamala. Kamala is falling. You got Beto. Beto is like gone. I think Sleepy Joe may be able to limp across the finish line. But today they announced that they're going to cut way back on his appearances because he is such a disaster. You have no choice but to vote for me because your 401ks, down the tubes, everything's going to be down the tubes. So whether you love me or hate me, you got to vote for me.
While Trump unleashes those attacks, Democrats are taking a much different approach to try to win the White House. The Washington Post pointing out the candidates are promising to offset voters' quote, anxieties and concerns with a return to normalcy via a president who is everything they believe Trump is not: measured, predictable, responsible. Or, at its most reductive, they're offering an unofficial pledge to make America boring again. Here are some of the 2020 hopefuls vowing to act the opposite of Trump.
I'm not going around doing crazy things just looking for a viral moment.
I said the other day that, if you elect me president, you can count on there being 2 weeks to go by when you don't need to think about what I'm doing.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm running for, in this case, running for president of the United States. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other person.
People are just tired of what we've been saying. It is tiring.
Okay, so Dana, I want to ask you about the two strategies. One, the advisor's belief that maybe Joe's great in the morning, but in the afternoon he gets a little tired, so they're thinking about scaling back his schedule. And two, what do you think about the Democrats trying to be boring?
Okay, I think that the strategy of having Biden do less, if you're worried about poll numbers, is probably good, because he had maintained his poll numbers at the highest levels until he started doing more appearances.
Right.
And then as he started doing more appearances, he started to slip. And also because others are ramping things up, like Elizabeth Warren, her organization is really good. So if they think that it will help him be able to maintain until he gets to a general, I don't think that speaks well to the idea of how he would do mano a mano against President Trump. So then the question of electability, I think, gets asked again. But his poll numbers have stayed pretty high, even though he has made some gaffes, but they have started to slip. Being boring again, I guess in some ways I think that most people are like, look, there is going to be a chunk of people, about 35% of the country, that are going to be out there chanting 4 more years, and they can't get enough, and they just love it. They can't wait for the president to be reelected. Then you're going to have like 35% saying, we've got to have a return to normalcy. We can't take this anymore. Yeah. And then I think that the swing voters are going to be, if you look down at this choice, as he said, love me or hate me.
Right.
Yeah. You have to choose me, because they'll say, well, it's only 4 more years, right? Like, let's just do 4 more years.
It feels like a lot longer than 4 years for Juan.
Help.
Well, what's the alternative?
Juan, did you want to say something about these strategies?
Well, on the first point, I think the opposite of what the Republicans call Trump derangement syndrome, which they attach to anybody who's concerned about Trump, is Trump anxiety syndrome. And I think the psychiatrists and the psychologists have all said, yes, people are more anxious with Trump and all. I mean, just this week, Trump goes out, he went after the Federal Reserve, he went after, I think he advised Israel to bar those 2 congresswomen from entering their country.
Yes,
nobody ever saw a president ever do that before. Even Republicans, Marco Rubio, Kevin McCarthy said, no, that's not a good idea. A lot of people, even the Jewish community, said, not a good idea, don't do that. I mean, it never stops with this guy. And so, of course, people are going to say, we'd like to get back to normal.
I just don't know if that's an inspiring message. Greg, I think what's going on is...
Biden 2020. America needs a nap. That's just... Okay, so let's talk about this.
How about America needs a break from that?
No, but I want to address this, and I'll show you the hypocrisy in this idea. The boring approach is based on a fact that Donald Trump can be exhausting. He's packed 12 years into 3 years, and we know that. The right and the left understand that. But now the Democrats know how we feel. They hate waking up every morning having to face the news of Trump. That every morning they have to deal with Trump. Well, that's been what it's been like for a conservative or Republican for the past 40, 50 years. Modern leftism has injected politics into every part of our lives. Sports, entertainment, sex, gender, our kids. We are suffocating under leftism. It's everywhere. Every day we wake up and we're faced with it in our culture. So now we finally got somebody who's throwing it back in your face every day. He's saying, oh, you want to pick on us? Right. Well, screw you. And it goes back to that polarization myth that the media keeps talking about. Oh, these are polarizing times. It's only polarizing times because finally the second pole showed up.
Right.
For the longest time, there was only one tent pole. It was, the left owned the ball. They owned the stadium. They owned the field. They entertained the academia, social media. Now you got a guy who's saying, I'm here, and I'm the other pole. Now they go, oh, it's polarizing. Almost swore. But I'm telling you, this is all garbage. This is all garbage. They are mad because they have to fight. It's about time.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Benching Biden is just that. It, to me, kind of screams of him being in trouble and he needs a timeout. So to me, it's a public admission of a failure. And he reminds me of the family Volvo we had growing up, which was a station wagon and had 300,000 miles on it. It's not inspiring anybody. It's just getting you from A to B. But it plays into that larger conversation of, are Democrats going to vote with their heads or their hearts? And with their heads in the past, where they were playing it safe and falling in line, it was a disaster with Kerry and Gore and Dukakis. Or maybe this time around, obviously, it's kind of a toss-up what's going to happen in the general. And I think it's funny that people like Dick Harpootlian in South Carolina are hosting fundraisers and saying, well, there's something to be said for two white guys going at it. It's not about Medicare. It's not about the Green New anything. It's about getting this juvenile narcissist out. Mm-hmm. They are freaking out. And in my response to what you were saying about them saying, well, Trump is exhausting. He's always in the news. I feel like it's when people say that I go too fast in life. And I'm like, well, sorry, not sorry. You can't keep up.
Yeah.
Wait, but this is
nicely done.
You know what? I think you had the rally last night in what you just said. But the fact is, even as he says, vote for me, even if you hate me or love me, and the economy will stink if you don't vote for me. You know what? The Fox poll this week showed like 2/3 of America say he's tearing us apart as a country. That's very real.
That was an actual poll. They said that.
Yeah.
They said tearing people.
Tearing
Trump
the country apart.
He's tearing the country.
I think the media is tearing the country
Oh,
apart.
absolutely.
Us not included.
Oh, okay.